You want to buy something fun and you have plans to modify it. Maybe you want to do some suspension, some wheels, maybe an intake, exhaust. Then before you know it, you're turning up the boost, getting a tune, maybe even a bigger turbo, and then you've got a blown motor. So what do you do from there? Well, obviously you want to build that motor and make more power, so you get another daily. Maybe it's a beater, something cheap, something reliable, something simple. You don't really have any plans to modify it, but in the end, what do you start doing? You start modifying it. You get the bug.
I don't want peace. I want problems always.
Maybe you drop it, you lower it too much, maybe you boost it, throw a turbo on that, and then before you know it, that car is not even drivable, or it doesn't have AC. And you want to take your girl out to go get some dinner or something, you don't even have AC in your daily driver, but you got a badass race car that's still being built. So what do you do once that happens? Well, you get yet another daily driver. Something reliable, something comfy, with AC, maybe a working radio. Ask me how I know. So what's the problem with this car? Well, this car has all the aftermarket support in the world, and everybody and their brother is wanting to throw mods at this car except for you, because you want a reliable daily driver. What do you do at this point? Do you turbocharge it, or do you keep it simple?
Here I go again on my own.
That's what this video is about today. Keeping your daily driver daily drivable. Modifying your daily driver with mods that aren't going to kill the drivability of the car, that will still keep it reliable. Whether or not it'll keep it in the warranty is another question, maybe another video. I'll touch on that a little bit today as well, but you know who you are. This video is for you guys that can't keep your car stock, and everything you get has to have some sort of modification done to it. So let's get this started. You see how it typically works is you end up with a simple car that turns out to be not so simple, or it isn't very easy to drive, or it's not, you just don't rely on it. So you get one daily driver to replace another daily driver to replace your other daily driver, and then you get caught in this snowball effect where you just can't stop modifying cars because you can't keep your hands out of the pot, and you're kind of, I don't know if addicted is the right word, but you know what I mean. We've all been there. Well, most of us have been there, and if you aren't already, you're probably well on your way to there because you're watching this video right now. That's just kind of how it works. Unfortunately, or is it unfortunate? Today I'm here to help because I have some, what I believe is good advice on modifying your daily driver to help keep it still daily drivable, to keep you out of this vicious cycle of having to buy yet another car to replace your daily driver, where you still turn around and look at it and go, huh, I'm quite happy with that. You know, maybe I really don't need to do anything more with it. Regardless, there's always going to be something more you want to do with it in the end, but it'll at least ease your pain on your daily driver and wanting to modify that, and allows you to focus on your other project cars that you have. So we're all in this together. Hopefully this video will help you guys out, and stick around to the end because we got some good stuff today. So the best advice that I could give you is just when you're modifying your daily driver is just keep it simple. Nothing crazy. Don't go crazy with turning the boost up, or just know the limits of your car. If you haven't heard of the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. So here we are. You just got your car, maybe it's your only car. If it's your only car, then this is a perfect video for you guys. You can look at modifying your daily like this. The more mods you do to your daily, the more it's taken away from your project car. And it really just hurts you in the end, in the long run. And then you end up asking yourself, why am I like this? Why do I do this? Why do I keep doing this to myself? So for most of this video, I'm gonna use my BRZ as an example. To me, this is my perfect example of an incredible daily driver that has been just that for me. I have 97,000 miles on it. I've put 90,000 of those miles onto it. And for the majority of the time, it has looked and sat just like this. Now, for the wheel setup, I went ahead and got some OEM wheels, and I am actually running wheel spacers. So for instance, these wheels are an 18x7 in the front, 18x7.5 in the rear, and I have 25mm spacers all the way around. These are bolt-on hub-centric wheel spacers. They're made of billet CNC'd aluminum with their own studs that come out of them. You can't really go wrong with this setup because it's literally just adding on to the hub of the vehicle that's already there. Or you can look at it from the other spectrum of adding on to the wheel hub such that it's a lower offset wheel. When it comes down to it, adding that extra little bit of wheel spacer to bring out the wheels closer to the fender will minimize the fender gap and make the car look lower in general. Honestly, one of the best upgrades you can actually do, at least as far as performance goes, and this goes for any vehicle, is a simple tire upgrade. Now, with tires, you have to consider where you live. What are the weather conditions, so on and so forth. Now, for instance, I live in Florida. I don't ever have to worry about snow here, so I can get performance tires and run them pretty much all year round. I like to choose a typically 300 tread wear tire and something in the ballpark between $100 to $200 a piece. Now with tires, aside from getting an affordable, moderately sized tire, make sure you get something with a decent aspect ratio, because in the end, if you get something like a, I don't know, 275/25 or 295/25, 19 or 20, the sidewall on that tire is going to be really thin. You're going to be breaking your back over every single pothole and bump you go across. Remember, a little bit more aspect ratio means a little bit more sidewall, so keep it to like a 255/35 or a 275/35, I would say at the most, as far as the smallest sidewall possible. 35 is usually a sweet spot for a decent sidewall and a cushiony ride and not so cushiony ride. Anything smaller than that, it just gets unbearable. It's not worth it in the end. So stick with something more common, cheap, and comfy. Because you gotta have that comfort on your daily driver that you're gonna be putting all these miles on. And not to mention, there's something to be said about a perfect wheel coilover setup on a vehicle. If you can get the wheels to line up with the fender with about an inch or 2 inches of space between the wheel and the fender, the tire and the fender, there's just something to be said about that perfect fitment, even on a daily driver. Don't go getting tires that are way undersized for the wheels that you are buying. You don't want to be stretching your tires. That will definitely increase the risk of a blowout when you're driving down the road. And honestly, it's not 2013 anymore. The stance stuff is kind of over with. Like, can we just forget about that period already? If you can't tell with the cars behind me, I'm kind of a sucker for the OEM wheel with wheel spacer look. Except for this. Ignore this. Now, to go a step further, we have suspension. You can do coilovers or lowering springs. Really, it doesn't matter. Lowering springs don't typically drop the car enough to cause that much damage to the struts. Will it create more wear over time? Yeah, probably. But if it's only about half an inch, 3/4 of an inch drop, I don't think it would matter that much. My suggestion, just go ahead and get coilovers. It's usually a couple $100 more, and you save a lot on labor if you're not doing it yourself. Also, if you are doing it yourself, it's a lot easier just to swap out the entire coilover than to change out the spring on the strut housing. So when you go to lower the car, keep in mind that you're gonna have to go over speed bumps. You're going to have to go through gutters. All these are real life situations that you're gonna come to eventually. Can you go slow through them? Yes, but ultimately you wanna keep that in mind. So don't go slamming your car. Don't drop it 2 inches off the ground, because you still need to be able to go over simple little things such as this. You don't wanna be that guy. Now with the coilover setup, a big thing to keep in mind here is that you wanna get something quality. You don't want to get some cheap knockoff eBay coilover kit that's going to break the first pothole you go over, or it's going to bend the strut the first pothole you go over. It's something I would definitely recommend staying away from, especially considering this is the vehicle that's going to be driven the most and you're going to put the most amount of miles on it. If you see a lot of people autocrossing or racing with a specific coilover, that typically means it's been through its paces and it's a well-rounded coilover. But make sure you get one with a softer spring rate so that you're not hating life driving down a semi-rough highway or road.
Spectacular!
Okay, so now that we got the real basic stuff out of the way, obviously if you really wanted to throw into that, you could also add a front lip and rear diffuser and a few little aesthetic mods, but don't go too crazy with it. I wouldn't go throwing a big aftermarket front bumper on it, because then you could run into fitment issues, or this stuff really doesn't hold on very well, or the paint won't match. It gets to be too much. So stick with something simple like a front lip, but even with the front lip, you gotta keep in mind that the moment you hit something on the road, that front lip is just gonna peace out. Then you'll be without one. So it doesn't really matter. Do that at your own caution. My personal opinion, I've never ran a front lip. Have I thought about it? Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I wouldn't go spending several $100s on a front lip only for it to get smashed by the first thing I hit on the road. Now, when it comes to raising the power of the vehicle, obviously you want to be able to hear your car a little bit. Maybe give it a nice tone or something like that. Some places it's entirely illegal to modify your exhaust. Other places you can get away with a nice, clean sounding catback exhaust. Usually once you start modifying the catalytic converters and so on and so forth, that's where you run into the big problems with the law. So do that at your own risk as well. But my biggest suggestion is to get a good quality, nice sounding exhaust that isn't going to break your eardrums when you're going down the highway or just annoying everybody else around you. Usually everybody can appreciate a good, clean sounding exhaust. So stick with something quality and something that's built to last. Now, maybe you want to go the step further and you have a turbo car and you want to get a downpipe. Well, with the downpipe, you typically would want to get a tune after that because the downpipe can really change the flow characteristics of your turbo, which when that happens, you're usually inducing more torque or power to your car. So at that point, most people would suggest getting a tune to go along with a downpipe on a turbo vehicle. At that point, you're really running the risk of voiding your warranty, especially once you get a tune on the car. But you know, sometimes we can't really help it. As automotive enthusiasts, we want to modify our vehicles, and sometimes you just gotta throw that warranty out the window and bite the bullet and go for it. Now, when it comes down to the tune of the vehicle, whatever you do, know the limits of the engine and the turbos or whatever you may have, and do not push them to their limit. Keep it at a nice, happy medium. Maybe turn up the boost by like 1 or 2 psi, assuming most cars nowadays run at 15 psi. Obviously, torque is ultimately what will kill your motor. So just because it's making more power in the mid-range doesn't mean it's necessarily better for your motor. Now, when it comes to picking a tune for your daily driven vehicle, please, please, please do your research, ask around, get some reviews, and find a good tuner in your area that is reliable and understands what you're using the car for. You're not looking for peak power. It's still going to be daily driven, and you need it to hold up and be reliable. You don't want to risk blowing the engine on your daily driver. NA cars are really, in my opinion, the best daily drivers because you're not as tempted to turn up the boost. When you have a turbo car, it's usually very easy to just crank up the boost and make a lot more power with it to the point where you're borderline blowing up your motor. Whereas if you have an NA car, you have to do a lot more to it. For instance, installing an entire turbo kit before you blow up the motor. And usually that's a line that a lot of people aren't willing or ready to cross. No matter what, with every performance modification that you do to your car, doesn't mean that it's gonna last longer. You are inevitably hurting the longevity of your engine, turbo, everything. It's just, there's a give and take. No matter what, if you raise the power, the longevity of the motor is going to drop. More strain on internals means more wear and tear. Now you can argue that, oh, with a proper tune, it'll last longer. Yes, this is true. It'll last longer for what you're doing to it. But that's really about it. So be smart with it. My suggestion is if you have a boosted car and you don't really care about warranty, I would do intake, downpipe, just to alleviate the back pressure of the turbo. Now, when you alleviate the back pressure of a turbo setup, a lot of times what happens is the turbine wheel speed will actually drop. So when you drop the wheel speed, that means the turbo's working less to create the same amount of boost. Now, with that, you can theoretically turn up the boost and make more power. But at that point, you're putting more strain on the motor. But at the same time, you're putting less stress on the turbo because they're able to breathe better. It's kind of a give and take. You really have to find your happy medium there with all that, which again, like everything else, you got a daily, and it's your only car. The whole point is to keep it reliable and keep it simple. Again, back to the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Now, for some vehicles, you run into an issue where your oil temps heat up when the vehicle is pushed to its limits. Now, being a daily driver, you may not be pushing the vehicle all the time, but for those few times you do, you want it to be reliable enough to hold that extra little strain that you put on the engine. Or maybe if it's even the transmission. Either way, this all falls kind of under the same umbrella, let's say. This BRZ behind me is a perfect example. When you drive them on the track for extended periods of time, the oil temps are known for heating up, and it can spin a bearing due to the thin oil from getting so hot. So, what a lot of people recommend to do, run an oil cooler. Oil coolers will literally save your motor. It'll keep the oil from overheating and thinning out and spinning bearings. Thinner oil typically means less oil pressure, which can hurt your motor in the long run. Again, we're focusing on reliability here so you can daily drive your car and not have to think or worry about it when you go to beat on it. Okay, but that's enough of my rambling for today. If you guys are interested in any of the vehicles I have here or just want to watch some of the build series I got going on, my 300ZX is almost done here. I got the CRX with the B20 VTEC swap, and the BRZ is soon to come. I do have another turbo install on a BRZ on the channel. If you guys want to see any of that, make sure you subscribe, go check those cars out. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like for me. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll see y'all next time.
Ice cream reefer, hold it up, yeah, we feeling gas. Driving with a turbo, going 100, running Florida. Riding with my shawty, yeah, I knew I had to forward her. Looking like a bottle, shawty bad, yeah, she